Hello and welcome back to The Independent Pianist. I'm your host, Cole Anderson, and I'm very pleased to be continuing my series on Bach's two-part Inventions today, and we are covering Invention number 14 in B-flat major. This is one of the musically most transparent and beautifully simplistic of Bach's inventions. Unlike number 8 and number 13, which were the last two inventions that we covered in this series, this one is much less, at least starts out, much less intensely contrapuntal. So you'll see that most of the melodic material for the first half of this invention is focused in one hand or the other. Of course, in his usual style, Bach is very even-handed about switching from one hand to the other, switching the melodic material from the right hand to the left hand. Bach was never one to fall into the trap of only putting melodic material in the upper part. He liked to get both parts equally involved in the fun. However, as you can see at the beginning here, the right hand has the main material, and the left hand has a kind of very dignified walking bass line, which supports it. So it's still an excellent counterpoint, but you can definitely see that one part is of greater importance here. It's much more clear than in some of the other inventions, where the two parts may actually have the same melodic material, just offset by a certain degree. You'll also see that I've marked the two motives here in the main theme. So I've marked that there is this little roulade motive in 30 seconds, and that kind of overlaps with this arpeggiated motive. And the reason why I separate them is that Bach himself treats the first 5 notes separately later in the piece when he is developing this motive. The second part, the arpeggiated section, that really only comes in conjunction with the first motive. And of course, you can probably see that there are 2 arpeggiated motives. There's the one on the left hand as well that's kind of supporting this different broken chord arpeggio in the right hand. So as I said, there's something almost a little bit gallant, almost looking forward to the classical style about the simplicity and straightforwardness of the musical idea here. This main theme, made up of these 2 contrasting motives, is only 3 bars long. So a somewhat unusual phrase length, but it's of great simplicity and great beauty. Then after this main theme, we get a connecting episode which treats only motive A by itself, traded back and forth between the left and right hands in a kind of playful, tender and playful dialogue. And then, in his typical fashion, Bach takes the theme into the left hand, and now the right hand kind of supports with these walking eighth notes, and the left hand gets to take the theme. Now, I think that this theme is almost perfectly designed to exercise the 3rd, 4th, and 5th fingers in the left hand, and that is a particularly weak spot for most pianists, simply because the majority of repertoire doesn't much call for the 5th, 4th and 3rd fingers to do much of anything most of the time. But occasionally they are called upon to do something, and it's always a problem if you haven't trained them in some way. So this is a great little place to do that. So I recommend my students to not avoid using their 5th and 3rd, 4th, and 5th fingers here. There are various fingerings you can use to avoid doing that. So for example, this first part of the motive here, you could start with your 3rd finger and then switch over to your 5th finger only when you reach the 16th notes. That would be one way you could kind of get away without having to articulate 5 and 4 very much. But I think it's really well worth it, because it's not impossibly difficult to use your weak fingers here, and the kind of not only agility that you develop, but the ability to phrase and the ability to shade and sing a melody using those weaker fingers is very, very useful. So you might notice as I'm going along that I'm quite frequently using those weak fingers to play these little roulades. Good, so we have a very balanced kind of phrase structure. We had the 3 bars at the beginning, a little connecting passage, and then 3 bars in the left hand, this time centering around the dominant key, F major. And now we go on to a developmental passage. So in this development passage, Bach begins to increase the intensity by switching the motive from right to left hand more frequently. So it switches now in 1 bar segments. And he's also taking us through various different key areas. The first one we start with is G minor, the related minor of B flat. So at this point, we've arrived at C minor. A little bit of a development, not too far afield though. Even harmonically, there's kind of a lovely simplicity to all this. And now Bach is going to fragment the main theme again. He's going to take just motive A, and he's going to develop it canonically. So now we're starting to get a little bit of that canonical development and variation that we heard in the 2 previous inventions that I covered so far. Number 8 and number 13. And finally, this flowers into a wonderful passage where the 2 hands double each other with the roulade motive, doubling always at the interval of a third or 10th. So if you've been studying my fingering through this passage, you'll notice, of course, once again that I'm liberally using the 3rd, 4th, and 5th fingers in the left hand to play these roulades. And then I'm also not shying away from using my thumb on black keys. And this might be a little bit controversial because it was more or less an accepted axiom at the time, at Bach's time, I mean, that you would probably avoid your thumb on the black keys most of the time. And in otherwise very excellent editions like the Czerny edition and the Busoni edition, their fingerings do avoid putting the thumb on the black keys. They sometimes have to do some rather convoluted things to do so. I don't actually think this is necessary personally, although you certainly can use those fingerings if they work for you. I think very simple, very direct and straightforward fingerings really fit the best in this most direct and straightforward of inventions. So I just like to use my thumb and my 5th finger on the black keys, and I don't worry about it. It works quite well on a modern piano. If you were playing on a harpsichord or a clavichord, perhaps you'd want to use a different fingering simply because the keys are closer together. And if you're using your thumb or 5th finger on the black keys, it can be easier to get in the cracks and hit more than one key by accident. It's a little bit of a different technical approach, I think, when you play these pieces on piano. So I'd encourage you to experiment with going ahead and using your thumb on the black keys and see how it works. Now we get a really wonderful section. This is where the main theme is treated again in a very close canon. This time we get the entire main theme treated in a very close canon, and it's pretty much precise. The left hand leads, and then we get the right hand following. Bach has to change a few notes here and there just to make it work, but otherwise it's pretty much the entire main theme treated in this lovely way. And then after that, there's just a short coda to kind of round things out and lead to a nice cadence. And that's the end of this very lovely, very simple invention. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed this short video on this lovely little invention. The more I've been going back and revisiting these inventions, which I haven't played seriously for many years, the more I'm struck by how much musical content there really is in them, and how perfectly the marriage of pedagogy and musical brilliance is achieved. These really are some of the best pieces that exist that were specifically written with a pedagogical intent in mind. We could mention some other collections that come close, and a few by Bach himself that maybe even surpass this one. The Well-Tempered Clavier, Book 1, probably comes to mind first off. And there are other collections like Clementi's Gradus ad Parnassum, which contains a lot of great music in it, or the Bartók Microcosmos. But still, I don't know if there's anywhere where it's quite so just pristine, and where the quintessence of what you need to really mentally master the art of having two independent hands making music on a keyboard is so beautifully presented. So that's all I really have to say about that. I will sign off for now. Please stay tuned. Next week we'll have some more great music for you. Until then, take care. Keep practicing. See you next time.